Hey everyone, so today's video is a bit of a doozy. We've been tasked as content creators to show the damage comparison between Truestrike and crit damage. Okay? For those of you who don't know what Truestrike is a mastery that is on a select amount of heroes within the game, and this mastery only applies in a PvP setting. So this is guild versus guild. This is all of the arena modes, regular arena, 3v3, and then RTA. And that's the only place they apply, okay? What Truestrike is I made a video on it a while back, and I suggest you watch that before watching this video. But this Truestrike rate is this possibility, as you see in game here. It is a chance to deal Truestrike damage and ignore a percentage of the target's defense if this happens. And if you see in the mastery, this goes up to 40%. So if you have this fully maxed out, you will have a 40% chance to trigger this Truestrike rate damage. So if you deal Truestrike damage, you will ignore a percentage of the target's defense. I don't know why it doesn't say it here, but it's 80%, which is a really high percentage of defense. But there is a caveat to that, and the caveat is Truestrike damage does not calculate crit damage. It is based off of your attack stat. Now, this is kind of hard to calculate because there's a whole bunch of different things that go into this. And also, by the way, before I go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to Elephant. We bounced some ideas off of each other. He gave a lot of insight. If you guys don't know who he is, like in our Discord, he's kind of like a wizard / mastermind of PvE content, even PvP content. So he was helping me with some of these thought processes. So big shout out to him. But anyway, I wanted to give him some props there because he has a lot of input for this video. Okay. So, yeah, back to what I was saying. So this attack stat is what you calculate the Truestrike damage off of. So that means that your crit damage is completely irrelevant. Now, this is where it gets tricky, okay? Is if you want Truestrike to do a lot of damage, you want to have a really high attack stat. And your crit damage stat doesn't matter. But the problem is, as we see in the mastery, it's only 40%. So 60% of the time you're going to be dealing crit damage, and the other 40% of the time, if you build your hero correctly, you're going to be doing Truestrike damage. So you have a lower percentage of dealing Truestrike than your crit damage, your normal damage. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Truestrike is going to do a lot more damage or have a lot higher impact on heroes that have higher defenses than heroes that have lower defenses. So that's another wrench that you got to throw into the machine whenever you're calculating if you want to build a hero with Truestrike or not. Now, the big downside to Truestrike, as I've already mentioned, is it's not available in any kind of PvE setting. So if you have a hero that has Truestrike and you want to use them in any of the dungeons, whether that be Rift of Chaos, the original Arcane Dominator dungeons, you have to build the hero with 100% crit rate, and you lose out on some of those valuable masteries that you could have over Truestrike, which is like attack percentage, or in most cases for damage dealers, it's going to be crit rate, So this is a very polarizing topic when it comes to the community. A lot of people really don't like Truestrike. The devs have said that Truestrike is a really strong ability, and for heroes that are used in PvE and PvP content should be happy to have Truestrike, and I completely disagree with that. I think if the hero is 100% PvP, then Truestrike has a chance to be a good thing. But it is very situational. I'll get back to my opinions here in a second, but the thing that I want to note about this build, okay? We already know how Truestrike's calculated. It's based off the attack stat, no crit damage. But more than often, you're going to be dealing normal damage, which calculates your crit damage, other than Truestrike, which is just attack. So I'm going to show you two clips, and this is going to be Crazed Urzag attacking a Nero in PvP. And as you'll see here, in those clips, whenever Crazed Urzag Truestrikes, he'll be dealing like 2,500 damage to the Nero. So it's that 6,200 attack stat, ignoring 80% of Nero's defense, which is dealing 2,500 damage. And then I go back in and I try and do regular crit damage with these damage stats. And he does about 1,800. So the Truestrike does more damage, but as we already mentioned, because Truestrike is only 40% damage, or 40% of the time where it's going to activate, you're going to be doing less damage more often whenever you build for Truestrike. Now, this is just one scenario. I'm sure there can be tons of comments on the things that I could have done, should have done, and that's the point I'm trying to make in this video, is Truestrike is just so situational in every single aspect of the game when it comes to PvP that it's hard to see it as a benefit, right? But with that being said, let's just jump into the clips and we'll show those to you and then we'll come back. Okay guys, so this first one is the crit damage, so you'll see that here. Okay, so 1,800, and then we'll show the Truestrike damage here in a second. Okay, so here's the Truestrike damage. It's going to be about 2,600, which is more than the crit damage, but we're going to talk about how, you know, it's not just about raw damage in the rest of the video, so let's get back to that. Okay, so you saw the damage differences there, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Like, that is something that you have to take into effect whenever you build characters for Truestrike. Sometimes you're going to deal more damage, sometimes you're going to deal less damage. But let's talk about the pros and cons, okay? So, the big pro of Truestrike is whenever you have Truestrike, you only need to build 60% crit rate on your heroes in a PvP setting and still do a decent amount of damage if you have enough attack stat or crit damage, right? So if you only need to build 60% crit rate on your heroes, that leaves a whole bunch of room to build up the other stats if you need to. So Crazed Urzag, right? Crazed Urzag has a couple things going for him. He does that bloodshed ability, right, where if there's 4 attacks, if he gains 4 rage, then he launches this attack, and he attacks all enemies, and he hits them 4 times, right? And each attack has a 30% chance to remove a positive effect, and then every time he's successful in removing that positive effect, he deals 20% of his max health as true damage. So it's beneficial to build Crazed Urzag with a little bit of health. He also has this block ability that allows him to take less damage. So he's more of a bruising damage dealer. This is where Truestrike is actually a really good thing for Crazed Urzag, because then you don't have to prioritize as much stats into crit rate, and you can prioritize health or defense or even speed if you want him to go towards the top of the turn order. That is the true benefit of Truestrike in this instance, where you're able to prioritize other stats and spread the wealth per se than on a raw damage dealer. But the counter argument to that is, if the hero didn't have Truestrike, he would have that 23% crit rate mastery that the other damage dealers have, right? So On the flip side of that, you technically wouldn't even have to build a character at 100% crit rate. It would have to be at 77% crit rate. So you're gaining maybe 17% difference in stats when it comes to spreading the wealth. So that would be the counter argument, right? Now, the other benefit to Truestrike that you can make a positive for is it allows you to ignore defense no matter what your hero's skill ability is, right? So Crazed Urzag doesn't have anything in his kit that ignores defense. So having Truestrike as a mastery will allow him the chance to actually do a little bit more damage against tankier units because he has the chance to ignore 80% of their defense. So that is a really huge benefit, right? That is a big benefit to heroes that have Truestrike that don't have anything in their skill kit that can ignore defense. Now, what this game has done, and this has been a big gripe with the community, is they've put Truestrike on heroes, and the most infamous one is Bocce. Bocce has Truestrike within his masteries, but he has this ability where he ignores 100% defense. So you never want him to Truestrike because his 100% ignore defense ability on his trait will calculate off of crit damage. And the damage output with crit damage is much higher than Truestrike if you have an ability that's already ignoring 100% of the defense. So when it comes to this, like this is so backwards. This should always be crit rate here. And the bummer with this is Bocce is a really important hero in Rift of Chaos Fire dungeon. And if he had, 23% crit rate in his kit, it'd make it so much easier for the community to kind of build that character to do damage in that dungeon. On the other flip side here is Hori. Now, Hori, you would think, and this is another con to Truestrike, you would think that Hori would benefit so much from Truestrike, right? So Hori is the rejected little brother of Bocce. Bocce has a great ability where if he kills somebody or if he attacks someone with the highest HP, he then does this roller bomb thing, right? Which is ignore 100% defense. Hori has a similar skill kit, but he ignores defense up, damage reduction, and shield effects, right? So he doesn't ignore defense at all. He ignores certain buffs and damage reductions, but he doesn't ignore defense, so he does a lot less damage. So you would want Hori to Truestrike. So I built him in really high attack. Well, this isn't really high, but higher attack damage with his stats than crit damage because I want him to Truestrike. But as I've already mentioned, that's only 40%, so that's going to happen less often statistically than when calculating against crit damage. And as you see here, because I've put so much into attack, I've really lacked on my crit damage. So if Hori does not Truestrike, he's not going to do a whole lot of damage. That's kind of the problem. So, in closing, what we see here is Truestrike is most beneficial to two types of heroes, for PvP and for PvP only, in my opinion. And that is, one, with heroes like Crazed Urzag, right? Where you want him tanky, you want some health percentage, you wouldn't mind some speed. You want to spread the wealth with his stats. You want him as beefy as possible, and then he's still going to do a good amount of damage. That is where Truestrike is quite good. And then the other one is on heroes like Elise. So Elise is a type of hero that you want her to be very fast. This is her Rift of Chaos build, but you would really prefer her to be very quick with more health and defense and damage stats. So she wants everything. This is a really solid hero to have Truestrike when it comes to PvP. The reason why people don't like this is Elise can be used in PvE. And like I said, if the character is not PvP only, I don't think Truestrike is ever going to be a good thing. So those are the only two instances where I think Truestrike is good. Thor is another one. Thor's another hero that has Truestrike, but you want a lot of health and tanky stats into Thor. He is a bruiser, right? He's there to last a long time, and if you can prioritize other stats like health and defense, that's where Truestrike really helps, because he's still going to be able to do a decent amount of damage, but he's going to be effective with what his kit offers him. So it's more of a discussion video. I know it's not really a damage comparison other than those two clips I showed you, but it's not as easy as just showing you, oh, this is how much damage Truestrike did versus this is how much a crit damage did. That's not the point. There's probably 200 different types of scenarios where you can compare Truestrike and crit damage, and you can say, oh, see, this is where crit damage is better, or oh, this is where Truestrike is better. And I think most of the time you're going to see that crit damage would be better, especially if you're replacing the Masteries with crit rate or attack percentage or something like that. So just a quick little discussion video, I would say. This isn't really a showcase or anything. It's just putting it out there on what you guys prefer Truestrike versus crit damage versus crit rate versus attack percentage. All those different options available to us when it comes to those masteries on the ability tree. But that's really all I got for you guys. Just a quick little discussion video. Let me know your thoughts below. All right. Catch you on the next one.